Malaria is an acute febrile illness caused by Plasmodium parasites, which are spread to people through the bites of infected female Anopheles mosquitoes. Malaria is a life-threatening disease primarily found in tropical countries. It is both preventable and curable. However, without prompt diagnosis and effective treatment, a case of uncomplicated malaria can progress to a severe form of the disease, which is often fatal without treatment. Malaria is the world's oldest and deadliest disease, killing over 10,000 pregnant women and about 200,000 children yearly. In 2012, malaria killed 500,000 children before their 5th birthday, with about one child dying every minute in Africa. Malaria is not contagious and cannot spread from one person to the other. The disease is transmitted through the bite of female Anopheles mosquitoes. 5 species of parasites can cause malaria in humans, and 2 of these species, Plasmodium falciparum and Plasmodium vivax, pose the greatest threat. There are over 400 different species of Anopheles mosquitoes, and around 40 known as vector species can transmit this disease. Some people are more susceptible to developing severe malaria than others, like infants and children under 5 years of age. Pregnant women and patients with HIV and AIDS are at particular risk. Other vulnerable groups include people entering areas with intense malaria transmission who have not acquired partial immunity from a long exposure to the disease, or who are not taking chemopreventive therapies, such as migrants, mobile populations, and travelers. This mosquito-infecting disease is preventable and treatable, yet kills at least 1 million persons every year in Africa alone. Of the 300 million to 500 million annual malaria cases, 90% occur in sub-Saharan Africa. Other scientific reports say 93% of all malaria cases worldwide occur in Africa. Southeast Asia accounts for 3.4%, and Eastern Mediterranean region for 2.1% of all cases. This risk of infection is higher in some areas than the others, depending on multiple factors, including the type of local mosquitoes. It may also vary according to the season, the risk being highest during the rainy season in tropical countries. In a recent discovery by a global change biologist studying the relationship between climate changes, biodiversity loss, and emerging infectious diseases, Colin Carlson said climate change is believed to affect how malaria spreads in Africa. He said the mosquitoes that transmit the disease have dramatically increased their range over the last century due to warm temperatures. This follows warning that climate change could impact everything from the weather to mosquitoes, except climate action for equitable future is taken. Africa is one of the continents to be affected by climate change, despite being one of the continents with the least greenhouse gas emissions. The global burden of malaria lies in Africa, and there are reports that the range could expand dramatically in response to climate change. According to the United Nations Children's Funds, malaria is widespread in 100 countries and territories worldwide, largely in the less developed tropical areas of Africa. Malaria creates an economic loss of about $12 billion every year in Africa. This figure factors in cost of health care, absenteeism, days lost in education, decreased productivity due to damage from cerebral malaria, and loss of investment and tourism. Anopheles stevensii, a mosquito usually found in India and Iran, is said to have arrived in Africa in 2012. Anopheles stevensii has alarmed health officials with its ability to resist some standard insecticides and survive all year since it arrived in Africa. These mosquitoes are believed to have arrived at a time when the parasite is getting not only tougher to kill, but tougher to spot, as the malaria strains that don't show up on rapid diagnostics tests are becoming more common. There are reports that Africa's native mosquitoes have become increasingly insecticide resistant. Apart from Djibouti and Ethiopia, this mosquito has turned up in Sudan, Somalia, and Nigeria. Fitsam Tadasi from the Amor Hansen Research Institute in Addis Ababa reports say Anopheles stevensii can survive anywhere, which suggests that the mosquitoes can be found in places where previously people were not expecting to find them. Anopheles stevensii has since been found in 4 other African countries, including Nigeria. The new malaria vector identified was first detected in Biori local government area, Gombe State, northern Nigeria, in 2020 by researchers at the state's university working in collaboration with the Nigeria Institute of Medical Research and National Malaria Elimination Program. It is widely recognized as an effective vector of malaria, particularly in urban and semi-urban areas, and the vector is complicated to eradicate. It has not been found anywhere near West Africa. Its presence in Nigeria is a primary concern for malaria control efforts, which already accounts for over a quarter of the global malaria cases. The twist, however, is that Anopheles stevensii breeds in the same places as the mosquitoes that carry yellow fever, chikungunya, and dengue. So it is believed that the efforts that target one would also control the others. On the release of genetically engineered mosquitoes into the open air, Austin Burt, professor of revolutionary genetics at the Imperial College London and principal investigator for target malaria, confirmed to me that there has been a small-scale open release of non-genetically modified mosquitoes in some countries in Africa.
Malaria continues to be a huge problem in Africa, particularly. Hundreds of thousands of people dying every year. And there are existing types of control, which have been very good. The death rate used to be much higher. And that's typically the bed nets and the indoor residual spraying and the drugs they have for for treating people with the malaria parasite. But we're reaching the limits of what those existing tools are able to do, and we need new additional tools to bring down the burden of malaria further. And so we're trying to develop new approaches based on the genetics, not using chemicals so much, but using taking genetic approaches to control the mosquitoes that transmit the malaria. And in particular, to introduce into a population of mosquitoes genes that will end up reducing the numbers of those mosquitoes. And so you end up with less malaria transmission. We're using the CRISPR-Cas9 technology that was discovered a few years ago now and has been widely used in many labs around the world. And we're adapting that to the Anopheles mosquitoes, the malaria mosquitoes, to interrupt or disrupt genes that the mosquito needs for them to be able to reproduce properly. So if we can disrupt those genes and thereby disrupt their reproduction, we'll end up with fewer mosquitoes.
CRISPR-Cas9, a genome editing tool creating a buzz in the science world. It is believed to be faster, cheaper, and more accurate than previous techniques of editing DNA and has made a wide range of potential applications. The latest study in series of steps towards using CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology to alter mosquito gut genes to make them spread anti-malarial genes to the next generation of their species could provide a new way to reduce illnesses and deaths caused by malaria. Gene drives are being tested as a new approach to controlling mosquitoes, locusts, and other insects. They work by creating genetically modified mosquitoes that, when released into the environment, mate with wild insects. The offspring contain genes that reduce mosquito populations or make the insects less likely to spread the malaria parasites. But scientists must prove that this approach is safe and effective before releasing gene-drive mosquitoes into the wild.
There's been a non-driving sterile male strain that was been developed that has been imported into labs both in Burkina Faso and in Mali. And in Burkina Faso, a couple of years ago, there was a small-scale open release of these genetically modified sterile male mosquitoes. And that all went according to plan, as expected. That is to say, we released them. For a couple of days afterwards, we were able to recover the genetically modified mosquitoes that we had released. And then they, over a period of some days, they disappeared from the population. And of course, they didn't have any progeny because they were sterile. And so that modification disappeared. And so, that's an example of the sort of step-by-step approach we're taking.
Genetic control interventions are capable of targeting both indoor and outdoor anopheline vector populations. The technique relies on the mass rearing of large numbers of sterile males, which outnumber the wild population locally and compete with wild males for female mates. There are rising reports of the discovery of a naturally occurring strain of bacteria that can help stop the transmission of malaria from mosquitoes to humans. New data published in a science magazine on August 3rd, 2023, suggests that the bacteria can reduce a mosquito's parasite load by up to 73%. GSK scientists who discovered the bacteria in conjunction with Johns Hopkins University say the bacteria works by secreting a small molecule known as harmine, which inhibits the early stages of the malaria parasite growing in the mosquito's guts. Harmine can either be ingested orally by the mosquito if mixed with sugar or absorbed through its cuticle on contact. This discovery happened by chance after a colony of mosquitoes in one experiment did not develop the malaria parasite. Scientists say the bacteria could be a new tool for fighting malaria, one of the world's oldest and deadliest diseases. Trials assessing its safety in the real world are now taking place at a contained field research facility known as Mosquitoes Fair in Burkina Faso in West Africa to assess how effective and safe it would be to use harmine at scale in the real world, hoping that by developing this bacteria-based intervention into our products, scientists may have another tool against malaria. The first malaria vaccine to be recommended and pre-qualified by WHO is believed to be moving into broader implementation, while a leading malaria vaccine candidate is in phase 3 evaluation. Other immunization approaches, including monoclonal antibodies and mRNA vaccines, are said to be in development. However, there are key challenges to vaccine development and access. During a webinar by PATH, an international non-profit global health organization based in Seattle that explored key challenges to vaccine development and access, financial, scientific, and delivery. Experts from various fields, Ashley Burkett, PATH Global Head of Malaria Vaccines and Biologics, Hema Srivasan, Chief Access Officer, MedAccess, and Jane Grant, Research Assistant, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, offered their perspectives ranging from implementation challenges, strategies and stages, and the alternative or complementary tools to seasonal malaria chemo prevention.
It's possible to more effectively align peak immunity with peak risk. So the idea is that can we boost immunity by giving the vaccine seasonally just before the rainy season to boost immunity so that maximum immunity aligns with peak risk in seasonal settings. If successful, this approach has the potential to offer an alternative or a complementary tool to SMC.
Malaria is a life-threatening disease found in tropical countries. It is both preventable and curable, but without prompt diagnosis and effective treatment, a case of uncomplicated malaria can progress to a severe form of the disease, which is often fatal. Malaria symptoms usually begin with 10 to 15 days after the bite from an infected mosquito, with fever, headache, and chills typically experienced, though they may be mild and difficult to detect as malaria.
So given the highly seasonal transmission of malaria in much of the Sahel and sub-Sahel regions, protection is currently given to children under 5 during this period via SMC, which is seasonal malaria chemo prevention, which requires children to take monthly doses of anti-malarial drugs during the transmission season, and this is currently widely deployed. However, despite this, malaria burden remains very high, and there's been thought to what else can be added to SMC. To look at this, a recent trial combined SMC with seasonal RTSS vaccination and showed that this combined intervention was highly efficacious. And based off of this trial data, the WHO did include in their RTSS recommendation the potential for countries with seasonal malaria to provide the vaccine seasonally. And this recommendation included 3 priming doses and up to 2 booster doses for seasonal areas based on the data available. But very soon trial data showing the efficacy of up to 4 booster doses will be published, so there may be potential to expand this based on new data. So far, the RTSS vaccine has been pilot implemented only in non-seasonal areas through an age-based strategy and only up to 2 years of age. And currently no other routine childhood vaccines are delivered following a seasonal schedule or beyond 2 years of age in these countries. And so therefore, new strategies might be required for the delivery of RTSS in areas for seasonal malaria. Delivery strategies. We are talking about two main components. Firstly, the vaccination schedule, which is the number of doses and whether they're delivered via an age-based or a seasonal-based schedule, or a combination of some doses age-based and some seasonal-based. And then additionally, there is the delivery system that could be used to deliver these doses. And for vaccines, that is the EPI, the routine immunization program, mass vaccination campaigns, or again, a combination of the two.
Malaria is a treatable disease. Artemisinin-based combination therapies are the most effective anti-malarial medicines available today and the mainstay of recommended treatment for Plasmodium falciparum malaria, the oldest malaria parasite globally and the most prevalent on the African continent. RTSS is the first and to date only vaccine that has demonstrated it can significantly reduce malaria in young children living in moderate to high malaria transmission areas. The vision of WHO and the global malaria community is a world free of malaria, and this vision will be achieved progressively by countries eliminating malaria from their territories and implementing effective measures to prevent re-establishment of transmission.